Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Medicine 3.0. This week, Abby VanLuvanee. She is a dietitian who has worked with our Marine Corps, with high-level athletes, Olympic athletes, college athletes, as well as everyday people trying to optimize their health and performance. I think you're going to learn a lot. Sit back, enjoy. Abby, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Awesome. So let's start off. I kind of start off this way with everybody. I want to hear your origin story. Like, how did you end up where you're at, knowing what you know?
Yeah, so it's actually kind of funny. I started off thinking I wanted to be a physical therapist. So I went to Penn State for my undergrad and actually got my 4-year degree in kinesiology. And one thing that I really liked about Penn State, they actually have the students do a lot of field experiences to gain knowledge, gain experience in different settings, see what you like. And thank goodness they did that because in the process of all that, I realized it really wasn't for me. So I was kind of in limbo for a while, getting ready to graduate with this like $100,000 piece of paper that I didn't know what I was going to do with. And honestly, I didn't until March of my senior year. I had no idea. So March of senior year, I was getting ready to go to an ACSM conference, and they were talking about different speakers that were going, and one of them was a sports dietitian. And I don't know why, just in my life, I'd never come across the field of sports nutrition at that point. I was an athlete my whole life and just never kind of rung a bell. And as soon as I heard that, it was like a light bulb went off, and I was like, all right, this is what I'm doing. And made the hard decision to actually stay at Penn State for an additional 2 years to get another bachelor's degree while all my friends left.
Wow.
And then from there, I volunteered in the sports nutrition department at Penn State, went to Florida State for grad school. I got matched to their dietetic internship there, did my master's there. I got my master's in exercise physiology and sports nutrition. Also volunteered in their sports nutrition department. And then after that, I went out and volunteered as a dietitian with the Olympic teams out in California for a bit in Anaheim. And then from there, living in California and not making any money doesn't last very long. So I actually came back to the East Coast in North Carolina, where I worked in private practice for a couple of years. And private practice, you see A through Z health conditions. So primarily, I did focus more on weight management and performance. I was their lead performance dietitian there. But yeah, it was a lovely experience, though, very well rounded. And after that, I went on to work with Marine Corp Special Operations Forces for almost 5 years, actually up until May of this year. So it was a really, really lovely experience there, really fun. And now I've been doing private practice on my own as well as that. But so now I work remotely. Huge change, but I like it. Working for my own private practice as well as a company called Nourish, just to kind of help supplement my private practice. But mainly right now, I focus more in weight management and performance with the patients I work with.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I love that background because it shows the breadth of knowledge, right? You're an athlete yourself, bachelor's in kinesiology, and then sports science and dietitian. So much base and so much experience. And that's why I really want to dig in with you on a lot of these different things. And the way that I'd like us to think about this is kind of two different ways. And we may not be able to cover all this in our short time together, and that's totally fine. What I want us to focus on is like, what are kind of foundational things we can help people understand around nutrition? And the two things are kind of healthy mindset towards eating, which I think so many of us struggle with. And then, okay, what are the simple things that we can put into practice to help ourselves eat healthier, live better, those kinds of things? So maybe to start off, and you can talk about performance, you can talk about kind of your work with weight loss or nutrition, but what are some of the mindsets that you see that are hurting people or not helping them, and how do you help them try to switch that mindset?
That's a great question. I think, honestly, the internet has played a very large role in these mindsets that a lot of people have. People kind of go into it thinking that things need to be very restrictive, that very polarized, I guess would be the right word to use, right?
Yeah.
Like, we can't have this and we can't have that. That's terrible for us. This is going to kill us, right? And it's unfortunate that that's kind of become the reality of what it is today, but just because there's so much influence on the internet about what might not be the best information. And obviously there are some wonderful resources out there, but unfortunately those sometimes get polluted with non-great resources, right?
Yeah.
So I think changing up the mindset from such a polarized vision of what food should look like to being able to teach people that you can have the foods you want to have. It just depends on the portion, depends on the moderation. I know it's such a cliche thing to say, but like I personally do believe every food fits, right? If you're able to, get your activity up, or we're not fully sedentary for our whole day, and we're able to have a balance between our fiber, between our protein, between our carbs and fats. I truly believe, and I think it's important that we make every food fit. Food is delicious. That's why we eat it. It's not just for fuel, and I don't know if this is inappropriate for the podcast or not, but I will always remember one of my grad school professors when we were in one of our classes, he said that telling people that food is just fuel is like telling people that having sex is solely for procreation, right? We get a pleasure from eating food. So I think, and sorry if that wasn't good, but I think it's important to recognize that though, because we're going to have cravings and we're going to want food, and to be able to have those and not feel guilty every time we have them, I think is really important. And that aspect not only impacts our mental health, but also physical health too, so that, I don't know if that fully answers the question, but that's kind of where I lean towards with patients.
Yeah. You touched on so many things that I think are important. I think in our world today, almost like to get attention on Instagram, the internet, whatever platform people use, I feel like they polarize things.
Yeah.
Right. Like carnivore diet, like you can only eat meat and it can only be fatty cuts of meat, or, like the craziness out there. And I'm very much of the same mindset as you, that every food does fit. You can't eat as much as you could possibly want of every single thing. But and if you're not getting, at least for me personally, if you're not getting joy out of some food every once in a while, like that's a problem.
Quality of life isn't there.
Yeah. Okay, so mindset number one is kind of non-restrictive, helping people understand that a healthy diet doesn't necessarily look restrictive.
Yeah, exactly.
So so that's mindset number one. What's another kind of pillar that you would build on as you are working with one of your clients to help them understand how you're going to build towards their kind of nutrition or their diet?
I think another big mindset to have is that you need to be adaptable, right? Life is going to happen. The process is never going to be perfect. We're going to have to adjust and change. And especially when it comes to performance, my goodness, trial and error is huge, right? Not every good example, like pre-workout fueling, right? I have a friend that chugs a 12-ounce glass of milk before she runs every time. I would throw up everywhere if I did that, right? So it's, trying to trial and error and figure out what works best for people within their schedule. So I think being open and adaptive and understanding that it's not going to be a perfect road, right? There are going to be bumps along the way. And as long as you're willing to work with those and, I guess not give up, being confident with the plan you have, being persistent with it, and being open and adaptive. Just because the holidays come, you're going to go visit your family. There's going to, things are going to get in the way of a perfect plan. It doesn't exist. So I guess adaptiveness would be another mindset I think is important for this.
I love that. The one of the things I like is James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, and he talks about, even he'll break his day into quarters and say, okay, if you lose the first quarter, that's okay. Just win the next quarter. And I think about that even as you build any habit, as you build a habit of exercising, as you build a habit of eating better, more kind of healthy foods, the right amount of foods, it just takes time. It's if you put somebody on the bench press and you're like, okay, I want you to bench 250. And they've never benched before, it's impossible, but they can build up over time to be able to do that. So I love that. Any other?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was going to say one analogy. I don't know where along my career I picked this up, but I got it from someone and I love it. It's not necessarily food related, but just like any habit or change you're trying to make. So if someone has a bad day, kind of like the quarters kind of thing, right? Yeah. So if you have a really rough day and you're just like, oh, whatever, screw it, I'm giving up, we don't always take that mindset with everything else in life, but for some reason with our health, we do a lot. Like the example I use though, if you drop your cell phone on the ground and it cracks, you don't just keep throwing it back down, right? Until it's totally like just completely shattered. So I kind of, if anything, you pay a little bit more attention to it, right? So
Yeah.
I like to use that analogy sometimes, and it's not fully direct with what we're talking about with health, but it does kind of put it into perspective. Like, yes, the whole day is not ruined if you just had a bad start, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the adaptiveness of quarters is such a great way to look at it.
That's actually a good analogy. It makes me think like sleep. Like if you have a bad night's sleep, it's not like you come back the next night and you don't try harder to have a
Yeah.
better night's sleep.
Yeah. That's so true.
And I mean, part of that is biologic. Like you feel exhausted and you're like, I
Yeah.
really need to sleep better. But I would even argue like you can get to a point in your life where exercise feels just as essential as sleep. Like you can get to a point where you miss a few days of exercise and you're like, I really feel like I need to exercise. So
Yeah. Your energy responds to it too. You feel a drastic energy difference too. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. So we talked a little bit about foundational mindsets. Are there any others that you would add in there? Kind of foundational mindsets?
I think being open, right? So kind of, and this might kind of go back to the first one, so I don't know if it's fully different, but a lot of people have a lot of strongholds with nutrition, right? And with exercise, with any aspect of your health, because it's personal, right? It's something that you do every day. So being open to new ideas, being open to different research, which I mean, that goes for us healthcare professionals as well, right? The
Yeah.
research changes every day. It's very
Yeah.
annoying, but it is what it is, right? So, staying on top of things and be able to, okay, I have to be up to date. This is a new thing that we're doing. And I think, but from a patient's perspective, if they're used to doing something this certain way because that's what they learned when they were younger and that's what they've believed their whole lives, and to have them to have to come in and kind of change that a little bit, obviously it's not going to happen right away, but being open to listening to a different point of view on something, or to different research, I think is really important. So being open as well, but I guess that kind of goes with adaptive, but kind of
Yeah.
different.
Well, some of this stuff is simple but not easy, right?
Yeah.
Like being adaptable, being open, like understanding that you don't have to be as restrictive, because it goes back to our childhood. It goes back to how we've eaten our whole lives. It goes back to the messaging all around us.
Oh yeah.
And so I think it's good to like continue to drive people back to these. Like I'll just give a few examples, and I'd love to hear some examples from you around this too. Like I will have people, so I'll use my co-founder just because he's totally cool with me sharing his health information. He does it himself you can go look at all his labs and you can look at his DEXA scan. And one interesting thing is I would keep telling him, he kept telling me he wanted to build muscle and that he wanted to lose weight. And so I'd say, hey, listen, like it's really hard to do both those things. But if you want to build muscle, you're going to have to eat in excess of calories. Like you can't be restrictive. And he was just like kept restricting. And he also would always tell me like sugar was the devil. And I was always like all food's fit. and now he just kind of makes fun of me when he's like, all food's fit. But I finally convinced him. He spent, a quarter with an excess of calories, and like lo and behold, he added 8 pounds of muscle, and like amazing, it works.
Yeah.
But like it takes time, even if you have an expert guiding you. It takes time to change that mindset to actually trust. Like, okay, this is scary. I'm gonna like not restrict foods or not. I'm gonna eat in this way that feels wrong, and I'm going to expect a good outcome from it. So I'm curious. I'm sure you've seen that tons of times. I'd love to hear any stories around that.
Yeah, I think I could probably give a theme more than just one single story because it happens. I mean, carbs are a really good example, right? So when I was working with Marine Corp Special Forces, I can't even tell you the amount of times like, our operators would come up and they're, and just regular Marines there too, right? Not eating any carbs because they're like, oh, it's terrible. I want to shred, blah, blah, blah. But their energy is terrible. Like they can't get throughout the day without, having a Zyn in their mouth the whole time or, chugging 4 energy drinks. And they just feel like shit. Sorry, that was my first one. I won't do it again all day. And, having that education there of like, okay, well, maybe we have some carbs throughout your day because they're not bad for you. They're going to give you that energy you need. And I do remember one Marine in particular, it took me like 3 to 4 months to crack him. And we had our first appointment. Then I would see, so my desk was actually in one of the gyms. So I would see him every day when he's working out. I'm like, oh, what'd you have? What'd you have today? Blah, blah, talk to him about it. And finally, one day he cracked and he ended up having some carbs throughout the day, as we had talked about, and his energy was just like that changed. And I had another, actually that reminds me of another story. I had another Marine who, and a lot of people are like this, the whole fasted cardio kick that was around for so long, which we know is not helpful. So particularly for strength training either, right? So one Marine that was just really struggling with energy during his workouts and would just wake up, go and strength train. And he's like, I just know I'm not getting anything beforehand. I just don't believe in that, blah, blah. Took him a lot of convincing. And then after that, he ended up PRing and like everything, because he was able to, once he finally ate and was feeling his body, he felt really great during those workouts. So both more like performance, that's more performance and energy, I guess. But I think it goes for aspects of his health too. But yeah, those are two examples I can think of right off the bat.
Yeah. There's I don't know if you've seen the movie. It's a newer movie. It's called The Fall Guy. It's got Ryan Gosling. And
I haven't. No, I've seen the preview.
There's a part where he's talking to this guy, and this guy's totally shredded. And Ryan Gosling says something like, "You need carbs. Your brain runs on glucose."
Yeah.
And I love that. Like your muscles, your brain, like they run on glucose. You do need carbs. And yes, your body can make carbs, but it's way less efficient when like what you're trying to do is have a PR or exercise really well.
Yeah, like sure, can you make it work without them? Yeah, but are you going to be optimized? Not even close, right? So, and is it sustainable? No, for most people, it's absolutely not, right? So, no, I love that, and that's another big thing too. I notice people not only their energy, but also their focus goes up. You know, their attitude throughout the day goes up because they're not irritable, because they're not miserable all day because they're cutting out carbs. You know, so no, I love carbs.
Well, how do you coach somebody through? So somebody comes to you and they're like, I want to lose weight, and you're looking at their macros and you're helping them figure out how many carbs, like, or they want to get stronger and lose weight. Like, how do you coach them through, like, trust me, you're going to need to do these things if you want to get this outcome?
Yeah, so I think part of that is understanding where they're getting their beliefs from to begin with. So every appointment that I work with someone, the first thing I tell them is like, hey, just so you know, this first appointment primarily is for me to get to know you, like get to know their life, everything. So that way I can see where those certain strongholds may come from or what their day-to-day looks like. So in terms of that, I get that background, see where that belief is coming from, if not social media, but usually that's the answer. And then I kind of, you have to be careful, right? Because some people are very open, right, to begin with. And they're like, hey, if you tell me, I'll listen. Like you're the expert, I'm not, blah, blah. Some people are the opposite. So you have to kind of meet them where they are and over time build that rapport. Because if you just try to come in and break down a wall, it's not going to work and they're not going to listen to you, and then you're never going to see them again. So I think, I hate using the word it depends, or the phrase it depends, but it does, depending on the person's attitude and beliefs towards a start. I think explaining research and explaining, like, unfortunately, calories in, calories out is what it is at the end of the day. Now, if you're talking body composition, sure, we can go into the macros for that and explaining how different macros can impact that body composition. But I think the best thing you can do with someone is be honest. And like I said, meeting them where they are and trying to gain that rapport and kind of like, hey, have you thought about it from this angle? And I don't know if that fully answers the question, but I think it's going to be different with every person you work with. But I try to be as honest as I can with people, but gentle too with it, depending. But in time, everyone will be, or not everyone will be, but you can get that rapport to help, get them in that right direction.
Yeah. I feel like it does depend. And in our day and age, it is very interesting because I'll just use like body positivity is like a theme. Like, I absolutely think there's nothing good that comes from hating your body. Like, there's nothing good from having like a dislike of your body. Your body is miraculous. There are millions of miracles happening every second in your body. Like, your body is amazing. That you're alive is amazing. And there's no reason to hate your body. At the same time, do we know that, certain amounts of muscle are better for your long-term health? And do we know that lifting weights is going to make your bones stronger, longer? And do we know, like, does science tell us these things? It absolutely does. And so I think that is a tricky thing to work with people as they work through these mindsets. Like, how do you keep a positive outlook on who you are today with a mind towards building or changing or becoming someone else. And I'm curious how you kind of tackle that, how you talk to people about that.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question and a really good point, because I think that's something that is very prominent. Just, people are always comparing, to everyone.
Yeah.
And again, bringing back to, I don't want to say social media every single time, but it is honestly a huge problem, right?
Yeah.
And I think if in our mind, like our thoughts control how we feel, right? It is what it is. So I love that philosophy that you have, where you really center it on that, that body positivity, and I do as well, right? And I think most dietitians do. I think if you are working with someone towards an overall health goal, I think that's a little easier for them to understand. If I am working with someone and their cholesterol is very high, and we're like, all right, well, these are the interventions that we need to work on, because if we don't, this is something that's going to become potentially problematic for you down the line. And in doing that, and if they have a secondary goal of weight loss, like, sure, that's okay. But, honestly, sometimes it just comes hand in hand, right? If I have someone increasing their fiber and decreasing a lot of those saturated fats, there's a good chance that weight loss might come naturally. And I don't know if I'm fully answering this question, because it's a really great question. And I would have to think about it for a little bit. But I think, like you said, our bodies are miraculous, and understanding that, it doesn't, it does so much stuff for us. It doesn't matter. The aesthetics aren't really that important, right? I know it's hard to tell someone, but to be able to have it long term. Yeah, I don't know if I have a good answer for that question, honestly. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. One of the tools, and I imagine you use tools like this too, is just like a DEXA. Yeah. And I have loved, and I have to say it's stronger for females than males, just because I think that most women are always told, like, you should always be losing weight. I think social media is kind of telling them that. And I'm not saying there isn't messaging towards men that we should look like Chris Hemsworth or whatever. Yeah. But I think the message is super strong for women. And it's been really cool to do a DEXA scan on somebody and say, hey, look, like, if aesthetically you wanted to lose weight, you could choose to make that choice. But looking at your muscle mass, your bone mass, like, your body is doing awesome. Like, your body is great. And I think having a tool like that is really cool.
Yeah. So I was very fortunate at my last job when I was working with Marine Corp Special Forces. I got to use a DEXA every day. So, and I think it is a really great tool. And this might be a better answer to your question, actually. But, and it's a huge education point too, right? Like, to your point, like, okay, you might want to, but what are the repercussions if we go any further, right? Like, I had so many Marines that wanted to be like 5-6% body fat. And I was like, well, we could try that, but I don't think you're going to feel very good at that level. And, working with some of them, like, when they got really low without speaking to me, they'd come and be like, hey, I don't feel great. Like, what should I do? And even just adding a couple percent body fat, getting them close to that 9 or 8 to 10% range, they felt so much better. And, their testosterone came back up because it dropped, their lifts went up, their energy went up. I had a couple female Marines who really dropped their body fat percentage just, before meeting with one of me or one of the other dietitians there, and working with them to get their body fat percentage back up, because they lost their period. And that's not great for a lot of different reasons, but, working with them and showing them, like, no, you need this body fat. This is important. It's not just aesthetics. Your body needs it. So I think it can be a really great tool, and it's really important, I think, to focus more on the actual overall health of our body and what it can do versus just the aesthetics of, oh, cool, I have a 6-pack this summer, but like, why? So
right. Yeah. A couple more things I want to touch on with you. I guess one would be, do you have, and like you said, there are good resources out there. So obviously I think meeting with you is awesome, but if somebody's not going to meet with you or another dietitian, what are some resources that you like that you would kind of point people towards?
Yeah. So some of my patients really like to read research. So I usually try to guide them to different journals that I like. Like, I love the Journal of International Society of Sports Nutrition. I think that's a great journal. I usually, if they are social media based people, I usually try to direct them to different, researchers that are out there that post really good content. You actually hosted one recently that I point people to a lot, Abby Ryan, and Lane Norton. I think he's great as well. So depending on what they're trying to learn about, I guess it kind of depends. But I I mean, I will just send them to, resources that are reliable, I guess I would say. And I try to give them a heads up about, maybe we steer clear of some of these other ones, like this TikTok influencer who has no credentials that's just trying to make a buck on their supplement that doesn't do anything for you. So, but I actually honestly usually direct people right to research. And especially if it's something like, for example, creatine is such a great supplement, right? And there's a lot of great research out on it. And Creatine for Health is a really good organization, and they host conferences, and that's like one of my favorite ones. But they host conferences every couple of years, and they post all the videos on their website of the conferences. So usually I've sent a lot of patients to that website so they can watch for themselves and learn. And yeah.
Very cool. I haven't heard of Creatine for Health. I'm going to have to check that out.
I'll send you the link.
Awesome. Yeah. One of my favorite nutrition books is actually Adam Bornstein, who wrote "You Can't Screw This Up," I think.
Okay, I haven't heard of that one. That sounds like fun though.
It's a great book. It's a great book. And if you don't know Adam, Abby Smith Ryan is friends with him as well.
Oh, okay.
And it's a great book on just kind of like we complicate things. Like, let's make it easy. Let's eat real foods and make it easier on ourselves and stop doing craziness around food.
I know. It's so simple. Sometimes it's annoying, right?
I know. But people need help. People need help with it.
Oh yeah. No, I mean like I just mean like as a person, if you like, you hear that, you're like, oh man, like it's like, but.
Yeah. So how do people get help from you? Like, where can people find you? Where can they learn more about you? Anywhere online?
Yeah. So I will say and if anyone's ever seen my business profiles on Instagram, they will know this. I am horrible about posting on social media. So I think I've posted 40 times in the 2.5 years I've had my account. But I'm trying to be better. It's just hard. I mean, business owner, you have every role. A lot of people will find me via referrals from other people, actually. Yeah. So like in Wilmington, for example, I was friends with a lot of different physical therapists there, talked to a lot of different gyms and just networking with people. But I do have an Instagram. My business name is Simply You Nutrition. So it's that. I do have a website as well. And the other cool thing about nutrition counseling is that most of the time it's covered by insurance. So people find me through their insurance portals too. But because it is a preventive service, because nutrition is preventative instead of reactive, right? Or it can be both. But most insurance policies cover nutrition like 100%, no copay, no deductible, nothing. So I would say 85% of the patients I see are all nutrition based, and they don't owe anything. It's just all completely covered 100%.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, obviously a ton of expertise. I love your motivation behind it. I think it's super cool that your broad range of working with, our military to professional athletes to everyday people. So hopefully we don't send too many people to you and give you like 2-year wait list, but I guess you could deal with it. But exactly. Yeah. Abby, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.